But every time I've gotten a no, it is a redirective, not to, well, you're not a writer. Well, you failed. Well, you must suck at this. It's a, this wasn't the right space for you. Move along. It's
Yeah.
like this freedom to say, okay, that didn't work. It's freedom of go move to the next space. This world is huge. People want to take in information and give and receive feedback. If you have a passion to do something, there's a reason for that. Pivot so that the reason fits the purpose.
Welcome back. We are on today with my guest, Bridget Chambers, on the Too Old for This Shit podcast. I'm Angie S., the founder of angies.com. That's angie-s.com. Link in the show notes. Where I'm a health coach. If you want to work with me, you can get in touch via the website or email me directly at hello@angie-s.com. If you haven't yet, please share this podcast with your friends, rate, review, subscribe to it on Apple Podcasts, follow it on Spotify, or for all the other platforms, whichever way you show love is how you can support this show. The more you do that, the more it helps the new listeners discover this show. It takes 2 seconds and it's completely free for you to do. And that's basically how you support a show on podcasts. Today with Bridget, we talk about how to figure out what your path is and how to follow it. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see I posted a picture a few days ago, right after this interview on Thursday, the 7th of May, where I explained that I was in a bad mood when I took it, which was right before the interview. And I talk about it with Bridget in this episode, why I was in a bad mood. But after talking with her, I felt much better. And it's to do with doing what's right for yourself. Because I was exactly where I was supposed to be in that moment with her. And it helped me forget about my worries for a little bit. And that's what I want for you too. Now, let's not get it twisted. I am still a little bit annoyed about that thing that pissed me off. And you'll hear me talking about it here with Bridget. But I hope this episode helps you find, or if you already found your path, to keep going at it, because doing your thing is so compelling and a no-brainer, but it's not easy. Many of us self-sabotage, have doubts, and try to find answers in what other people are saying, but just do it. And only by doing it will you figure out all the answers, whether in a moment of inspiration or from some sound external input. Now, like I said, it's not easy, but it's really, really worth it. It is so worth it. So without further ado, let's begin. And thank you so much for listening. I love when you write to me and reach out. Please feel free to DM me. I love connecting with you all. Thank you so much. Let's begin. Welcome, Bridget.
Thank you so much for having me, Angie. I'm really excited.
I'm really excited too. This is like our first time talking. And I really wanted to have you on the podcast because there was an article, now it has been published now, but when I first saw it, it was still a preview, and it was a preview for Marie-Claire. And yes, there was a couple of things in that preview that really hit a chord, and I was like, okay, I need to get her on, and we need to chat. And I'm just going to quote you now, okay? I'm just going to quote you what it was that hit me. And so, when something is missing from us, a person, a feeling, an unfulfilled purpose, our minds don't forget. When we can commit to creating a life that honors what is meant for us, we are better equipped for the inevitable hardships and challenges. And then there was a second part in this article where you said, I learned that sometimes the most important things in life are worth a second try. So before we dive into this, Bridget, please introduce yourself, where you live and what you do.
Okay. My name is Bridget Chambers. I own a company that was founded on life coaching, but I'm also an author and a speaker. I live in Chicago, and I can't wait to chat with you about my journey. But yes, this is what I feel like is my life's work. And I basically spend my days and weeks connecting with people and helping people through transitions and making sense of their own lives.
Oh my God, this is so good, especially now.
Yes. Isn't that true?
Yeah. And I think what's important now is that regardless of what's going on now with everything, there's still a future that we need to build for. whether this future is in 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years, there's still a future after that. And I think, so I'm really, really interested in hearing what you've got to say. So can you tell us like what made you become a life coach?
Yeah. So it's an interesting story because I think in some ways it's all of our stories. It's sort of like I ask my coaching clients habitually when I talk to them, when they have a question about, where do I go or what am I supposed to do? And my question to them is always, well, what do you do like breathing? And I think we can find our biggest passions, our biggest value adds, our best interests in the things we do that don't feel like work. So when I was younger, I was always sort of that designated advice giver in the friend group. So that I always enjoyed talking to people and connecting with people. What I didn't realize until later on when I was in college was that I had an innate curiosity about me where I wanted to learn more about people's stories and what made us unique, but also what made us the same. And so I went to college for writing and business. And then thereafter, I met a life coach who I just loved. And at that point, life coaching was not something that anybody talked about. Everybody knew what therapy was. Although even therapy and psychology and psychiatry, it was still a hush hush thing. People didn't.
Which decade are we talking about? What kind of years is this?
So I graduated college in 2008.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
And yes. So, the only life coach I had ever heard of was Oprah's life coach.
Yeah.
So when I said, hey, I think I might want to go pursue schooling for life coaching, people kind of gave me the furrowed brow of like, well, what's that? And you're only in your 20s. Who the hell are you going to coach? I graduated college and then I went to coaching school, but coaching to me is just a fancy word for unbiased opinion that we all need. I think everybody needs a coach. I think if we take the analogy of coaching in sports, it's like, well, what's the most important sport we're ever going to play? Well, it's this thing called life. And I can't run a marathon for someone, right? I can't throw a baseball for someone, but I sure as heck can sit and help people train to become the best runner or to dominate that baseball game. And so I loved the idea that coaching was not about giving advice. It was about listening and reframing perspective and giving someone the freedom to choose what's next for them. So that was my journey.
Yeah, and I think also it also gives them the permission to see themselves differently or to see themselves for who they are, because so many times, we see people and you're like, that person should really be so much more confident than how they come across. That person could really nail it. They could really nail it. They just don't believe in themselves. And then you have the other side of the spectrum where people are
true. It couldn't be more true. There's that it's very hard to see ourselves in ourselves. It's hard to when you're in your own brain, it's hard to see the stuff right in front of you because you're stuck with your own brain. So to have somebody else see you differently, what's already inside, it's just hard to pull out, is very freeing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no. And I think the thing about having, it was actually a friend of mine. She used to be a guest. She's been a guest a couple of times, Melanie Former. We had a chat last week and she said, it's not only is about giving yourself permission to see yourself the way maybe some people have told you how they see you, but I think the way sorry, let me just what I'm trying to say is that there's two things, right? It's one is you have to is having permission, but also in a way it's a duty, because imagine if people like yourself or people like Jasmine Star or people there's so many people, whoever it is that people are feeling inspired by, if they weren't doing what they're doing, it'd be a letdown on everybody else. They'll be robbing away this thing that is so important, that is actually helping someone else. It could make someone's day better. Just that at the moment is so good. But, what if it can be more? Because if you change someone's day, that whatever they do in that day can change their future if they keep doing it consistently over time, right? So it is an important thing to have someone who can help you to get there. Can you just clarify, you mentioned something, you ask your clients, What do you do breathing? Can you explain a bit what you mean by that?
Yeah. So, what I mean by what do you do, like breathing, is, what do you do when your mind wanders? And to the point that you just made, which was really brilliant, which was about like, it isn't just about what we want to put out into the world or what we think our purpose is in the world. It's also about what we'd be taking away from the world if we didn't put it out there. And I
Hmm.
think that was a really astute point. And that's what I mean by the do like breathing. There's things that we love to do. We all have stuff we love to do. And it doesn't have to be a huge passion, right? Like it can be reading, it can be being around children, it can be about connecting with other people, it can be about working out. There's stuff that we do that just brings us joy. And I think that's often a really good starting place when someone feels like they're either misguided or they have no direction or they feel lost in the next place to go. Is instead of looking out there into the abyss of, all right, what would be the next smart thing to do? Or what would be the next
Mm,
thing she would do? Right? It's
yeah.
about, wait a minute, what do I already do? And I think that can be empowering.
Yeah. And I guess it's like the things that you're natural curious about is kind of,
Mhm.
it's not a plan. It's like for me, like the health coaching, I never thought I'd ever do that. It was friends who kept saying, why don't you do this? Why don't you start something? And I was just like, nah, I just do
Yeah.
this because I love it. I just love health. That's just my thing, but it's not. And then actually eventually, and I was like, so it's like, and I was just like, yeah, actually I do this all day, every day. Why am I not? Yeah. And then eventually like I had to like go through a few like personal walls about putting myself out there, and I'm not there yet because if you look at my social media, it's shit. I'm like, I need to like I'm more like I prefer like private settings, and I'll talk to you in a
Yeah.
group, but like putting myself out there is like, so I'm working on this. But so in terms of, so I think, yeah, it makes sense. Like, it's like, what are you natural curious about? What do you love learning about? What is it that's important to you? Those kind of things, sort of most like, and it's not because you have to change every passion into a business because that can also ruin it. But it's like, that's a
Right.
good place to start, right? So,
Absolutely.
and I wanted to talk about that missing thing because you mentioned about in the quote. So I'll just say the quote again. So you say like when something is missing from us, a person, a feeling, an unfulfilled purpose, our minds don't forget. When we can commit to creating a life that honors what is meant for us, we are better equipped for the inevitable hardships and challenges. Like, I love this. So can you tell us like how do we know what it is that's missing if we've never had it?
Yeah. So, I often think about this, on a small scale if I'm having a bad day. So I'm having a bad day, and usually there's a reason why.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time, when we can't define the why of something, it's because it's not the big obvious things. So, if we've gone through a trauma or something that's brought us grief, that's an easy thing to pinpoint. This is why I'm sad, this is why I'm mad, this is why I'm enraged. But there's so much happening in the nuance of life, so much. We're in, and really until this pandemic struck our world, we are creatures, human beings are creatures of routine. So we
Mm-hmm.
typically get up and do the same stuff over and over and over again. It's the way we feel we work best. It's it's what makes us continue to move forward with our work days and our relationships. And we sort of find something that works well enough for us and continue in it. But I feel like in my life and in the lives of my clients, the biggest aha moments I've had, the biggest revelations I've had, haven't come from um, routine. They've come when my routine is disrupted. And that's what's happening in our world right now. So when I say when something is missing from us, a person, a feeling, an unfulfilled purpose, our minds don't forget. What I mean is we all were born with something called a gut inside of us, like an internal compass that showed us before we went to school and before our parents started teaching us their beliefs. And before any of that happened, we were born with a soul and we were born with a gut. And that gut has direction. That gut has loves and passions. If you think back to your childhood and you think of your first happy memory, a memory of you laughing or being at an amusement park or being with family, we all had strong, really smart, intuitive feelings. And those things do not go away. So I believe that things that we loved when we were little, or feelings that we had when we were little, or people that we were drawn to when we were little, we don't let those things go. We have to kind of return to self before we can make decisions to move forward in the future. So I think committing to creating a life that honors what's meant for us isn't necessarily going on some archaeological dig trying to figure it out, but it's returning to ourself and deciding, like, what's missing here. Like, maybe I'm upset not because I need more, but because I'm missing something that used to be a part of me that isn't anymore.
Yeah. I think also, like, this pandemic is also, I mean, I'm having a bad, like, this morning I just woke up in a bad mood. And I was just I've been fine. I had like a great week, and then all of a sudden this morning I was like, no, not having it. And I think I realized it was more like and I think it's to go into like that missing part. I was just thinking, I don't want to bring people down now who listen to this, but I was thinking, shit, because I'm single, and I've been feeling really good about being single, living alone in this pandemic, thinking, like, I was like, well, I'm on the winning team here. I don't have to be dealing with someone else's stress and whatnot, and I just have to think about myself. I can be really selfish, It's like my only worry is like family back home who I can't fly to. That was what made me really anxious,
Yeah.
But other than that, like, it's literally, so just I can just be selfish, and which is obviously not a positive trait, but like I didn't have someone else's worry in the house or in the flat that I had to carry on. But I think today it was just more like, because I'd been looking at some articles from Harvard, and it's, the worst case scenario is that it's going to be in and out like this for 2 years. We're going to go back out, then we go back. And I was just like, wait a minute. I'm 41. What? Yeah. So like no dating, no. And I'm not someone who enjoys like one night stands. I tried, it's not for me. So like, I like to be in a relationship to get my socks off basically. And it was something meaningful, And I'm like, well, so what? So another 2 years? And I was like, wait, last time I had sex was in January and it wasn't even great. I'm like, what? And I was like, so I'm not going to have someone that like, I'm not going to have a boyfriend basically. And I was in the park and I'm not even, I don't think I want children. I mean, if I get pregnant, I'll keep it, but like, it's a lot of information I'm giving out here, but I was in the park and there was this mom with her little boy. He was probably around 2 and he was the cutest. And he was like flirting. You know how little boys always flirt, they can tell when you're a woman. And he was like completely flirting, waving. And I was like, I just really just wanted to hug him. Because I love kids. I don't have any, but I love kids. And I was just like, wait, and I want a pet. And there's so many things. I was like, it put me in a bad mood. I was like, these are the things that I'm going to miss, but it also shows me what I want. And, there's, I mean, I've never been one to settle. So I am single, but now I'm like, I don't miss anyone from my past either. I don't miss anyone I dated or had a relationship with, but that's a good sign. But I'm like, it'd be nice to be able to have that special someone, So
yes. Yeah. And you bring up such a great point right here, right now. Like, this is huge, in my opinion. There is something really important about like keeping yourself on the hook for stuff. And this is what we do, right? We're all about like improving and self-improving and like, okay, how can I like be in a better mood and improve myself and be the healthiest? But like, isn't there also value in going, you know what? I woke up in a bad mood today. I'm sad. I'm not missing anybody in particular, but that almost increases the loneliness. And today, like, I'm going to let the sadness settle and perhaps it will create for me where it needs to. Like,
Oh yeah.
instead of like, I've got to fix this. And that's what I love about that. It's like, if we're all being real, there are moments like of real deep, dark loneliness. And that's not, I don't know that that's something we have to avoid talking about, or, hiding it in our closet and pretend like, and it's so funny because I think people get surprised hearing that from a life coach. Like, no, I'm not going to sit around and say like, we need to cuddle every wound we have and sit and talk about it and cry every day. But I also think that like, the movement forward comes from the looking and saying like, here's what brings me pain and sadness today. And I'm just going to own that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. I say this all the time. I was like, the one thing that helps me, 'cause for me, mental health is super important, and for me to keep my mind right, because it hasn't always been good. And so for me, what's helped me is to just let it be. Like, instead, I used to always push it down. I used to be like a man. I'm telling you, I used to be like a bloke. As a teenager, I didn't cry. I was really hard, really hard to myself, and just didn't let feelings show or feel feelings really. But now what's really helped me is that if I'm feeling shit,
Yeah.
I let myself feel like that. I don't go outside and show it, but I let myself, if I need to cry, I cry. If I'm in a bad mood, I'm in a bad mood. But, and that's, if I just let myself go into the depth a little bit, into the darkness, I come back out much, much faster. Because the longer I sort of let it simmer, oh my God, forget it. Then it just comes out. Yeah, forget it. So, it's important. Yeah. And it's part of health. It's part of health. It's like with food. You can't just always eat junk food the same way you can't just always eat quote unquote clean. I don't like that term anyway. So, but same thing, if you want to have a glass of wine, have a chocolate, have it. It's just hard. If you can have it within the context of everything else that you do that's good for you, it's part of that balance, allowing yourself to live basically and feel,
Yes. I think that analogy is so perfect, because isn't it insane for us as human beings, right? Living, breathing beings, to expect that we are not supposed to feel a myriad of emotions and a myriad of feelings day in and day out, right? Like, that's kind of the whole point of this game called life. And I think that goes back to, we can't figure out the missing things, the missing people, the missing purposes, if we're not looking at the stuff that brings us pain. That, I think, is where we figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, absolutely. It shows us, what matters to us,
Mhm.
And actually that's interesting, because that sort of comes into this, because obviously we don't want to wish pandemics on people for them to find their life's purpose, right? So like, when's the next one happening? I need to know what my true north is. Okay, let's go. Another month.
I need to create some art. Can somebody? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think there's the second part of the quote from your Marie Claire piece, and it was the one that says that, I learned that sometimes the most important things in life are worth a second try. Now I want to go a little bit into this. I want to dive into this. And I wanted to start off with like, how do you know what's truly important? Because obviously we have this pandemic, and obviously certain things are coming up to the surface for a lot of people. And we're like, what, this isn't important. This is what I love, but maybe for some it isn't, for some people, maybe that hasn't happened. So there is that, but there's also, not coming from a place of fear and total panic and like, oh, this is what that's what's important to me now. So how do we really know what's truly important in life that's worth us, worth giving it your all?
Well, this is the first thing that comes to my mind with it. And I think it's just important to say, because I think we all need to hear it. And I think I say it out loud to myself in the shower every day when I talk to myself, which is weird, but there you go.
Oh, I talk to myself. I live alone. I talk to myself all day long.
No, I do. Like, I will have full conversations. Like, I'm like, oh my God, and then she said this, and I can't believe it. It's like, okay, I guess I need to like write this down on my computer. But
I have argument with people in my mind, and then they don't even know I'm having an argument in my head.
No, they have no idea. I just won that argument. I dominated that. Okay. Um, okay. So here's what like is coming to me to say that I feel like is important to say. I would amend that quote that
Mm-hmm.
I wrote to, I think every important thing in life is worth a million tries because there are so many lessons. Well, and I'm just going to talk generally for a second, and I'll bring it back specifically to the time we're in. But
Mm-hmm.
there's lessons that I'm sure your listeners can resonate with this, and I'm wondering if you can resonate with this too. Like, when something happens and you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, this is happening again. Like this thing that happens to me all the time, it's happening
Yes.
again.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I will literally like look up. It's usually in the car when I'm thinking about it. And when we weren't at a stay-at-home order and I drove a lot.
Yeah.
And I would look up to the sky at the stoplight and say, oh my God, again, like, haven't I mastered this thing? Why is this bothering me still? Why is this showing up again, again, again? And honestly, I don't hear a vocal answer, but I answer myself and say, because you haven't learned it yet. You
Mm-hmm.
haven't learned it yet. And I think that can happen with hard lessons we need to learn, but also our ever breathing, changing purposes that we have in life. And let me say, too, that I know there's a lot, and this is why one of the reasons that I really enjoy listening to your podcast, because I think you're genuine and real and you get that from even though I don't see you, I get that you're genuine and real and very much like what you see is what you get or what you hear is what you get. I
Thank you.
think you're welcome. I think there's this tendency to promote this like there is something that you're supposed to go find and that's supposed to be your purpose and that that's the important thing you have to do. Sometimes it isn't that. It isn't one big thing. Because you know how when you've got a big, huge to do list and the list is 40 things long?
Oh, yeah, it's stressful.
It is.
Mm.
When you cross off just one thing off that to do list, the to do list seems way less daunting.
Yeah.
Now, there's still 39 things on it, but your brain processes it like you were able to do it once, you could create it. And that's the same way I look at moving forward in your life, trying to equal parts, go after what it is meant for you and the things that you're passionate about and purpose filled stuff and places where you can add value. And also trying to get through the barriers, the stuff that hurts, the stuff that prevents you from getting to the next step. I think we have to take those in tiny little steps. And so that's why I like to amend the quote to they're worth a million tries because there is no mastering stuff in this life. There's not. There's just the one thing at a time.
Mm. So, you mentioned something about, I don't know if I misunderstood, you said like your purpose can change.
Yes.
So can you explain that? Because I was just wondering if maybe like we're thinking, if maybe sometimes people maybe confuse purpose with goal or, because obviously a dream, for example, because sometimes people think, oh, okay, you know what, I don't know. They may say they want to impact a thousand people to eat better, for example.
Yeah.
Or some people would be like, they want to have a house, a bungalow on the beach, and live that lifestyle. But then it may not actually really be aligning to the way they're doing it. It may not really be aligning to really their true purpose, which is maybe actually empowering someone or make someone feel good or whatever it is. So, but do you think that part, like the deeper purpose, can change over time?
Yes, I think that's a great point. And I think somebody who was not me came up with this line, which is clarity comes from engagement, not
Oh,
thought.
yes, Marie Forleo.
Yes, Marie Forleo.
Yeah. She's great.
That's always been one of my favorite lines to requote because it is so true. Like, I can think and think and think and think about something to death. But until I'm actually doing it, like I could say, right, 10 years ago, I want to become a life coach that goes and speaks and does TED Talks. Well, until I did the talk for 10 people in the cafeteria, how would I ever know that I really enjoyed speaking, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what I mean about your purpose changing. You can have a really keen idea of what you do, like breathing, what you enjoy, where your mind is when it wanders, what you sit and think about. And that means something. It's not
Yeah.
meaningless. It means nothing. But until we engage ourselves in the process of starting one of those things, we can't call it a purpose.
Yeah.
Now, once, and that's what I mean, and to your point about shifting and changing purposes, and I'm sure you can relate to this, and everybody can relate to this, where if I'm dreaming about doing something and I either accomplish that thing or my path takes me on a path that is my journey, I'm sorry, takes me on a path that meanders in a different way, my purpose changes because I'm learning as I go. And so I think like sitting and dreaming about the ultimate goal, there's value in that. And there's so many courses that talk about that and so many podcasts that talk about that, that sitting and thinking about positive things about what you want to go and do, there's value in that. But I think until you get your feet on the ground and start trying it out,
Yeah.
we can't totally define our purpose. And I will tell you, Angie, like my purpose changes every day. I know that I love having a coaching business, but what started as one-on-one clients might morph into something different, right? And maybe
Mhm.
it becomes a course or a group, and then maybe next year it's really my writing that I want to work on. So it all comes from the same internal want and need to impact and connect. But I think the small steps within that purpose are consistently changing.
Yeah. You have to try before you know if you like it. And that is so, so true. And two, you oh, oh no, I lost it. I'm sure I had a very good point number two and it's just gone. But like you said, like clarity comes with engagement. You have to try it. Oh, that's it. The second point was you cannot, and I have to keep reminding myself, you cannot compare yourself to what other people are doing in your field. So like, if you are like, oh my God, look at what they're doing on their in their businesses, or in whatever it is
Yeah.
they're doing. Let's say if you want to be like a pediatrician or a doctor,
Yes.
and you look at what the
Yeah.
other person, how many patients they have and all the papers they're writing, you can't compare yourself because you starting, but they've already been doing it for a while. You can't. A lot of people, I think, we are comparing ourselves with what actually has taken years for the people to get there. And when
Yes.
you do that and you don't get the results straight away, people go, oh, they think they're shit. They think they can't do it. Maybe they're not passionate about it. Maybe people don't like them. But what they forget is that it takes a long time. It can take a long time, but it takes doing it. You just have to do it. You just have to get your hands dirty and do it. And that's the hard bit. That's the hard part. It's You just got to keep going, even like not much is coming back. And that is very difficult because that's obviously when you're in that process, you're liking the feedback, and the feedback is an energy, just in the same way as when someone starts to pay you for your services. That's an energy. It's a confirmation that someone's valuing what you've got to offer. And
Yeah.
so when you don't have that, that's really difficult to keep going, right? So because then that's sort of like brings me to one of my next point is like, how long do you keep going? Because there's that thing where people, they feel like, well, they've invested all this time, all this money into something, they may be going bankrupt next, but like they've got to keep grafting and doing it. Like, how do we know when it's not right anymore, or that we need to maybe pivot? Like what's the difference between that?
Yes, I think that's a great question, because I think that's a story that we're all going to feel. So let me say these two things. One, I think when you start to find yourself comparing, they're doing what I'm not, they're writing what I'm not, they're drawing what I can't, they're further than I'll ever be. Remember that they were you. They were you. They
Yes.
had an idea. It was a seed. It became something. And I think what has freed me a little bit from the game is her doing it or him doing it is making space for me to do it too. Because if someone's buying what they're doing, that means that there's a space for me to do it.
Yeah.
So that has helped me a little bit. It used to be really hard for me, honestly, Angie, in the beginning of all this. It would be hard for me to watch successful coaches, anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a writer, it would be hard for me sometimes to read beautiful things that other people had written. And I think that happens because there's a part of you that resonates so much with what they're doing that you wish you were the one doing it.
Yeah.
So what I've tried to do, and I am not perfect at it. like we all have envy in us, and I don't care how much self-work we've done.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, exactly.
Right? We
Yeah.
all have that. But the only mind trick I can help with that is the minute you feel that envy and jealousy, try to reframe that perspective to wait a minute. There's enough room for me there too. The upper limit issue with sort of hitting a wall and saying, I'm running out of resources, I'm running out of energy. I don't know that I can continue this. I go back to things are worth the second try. I really hate, and I actually had to have this discussion with someone in my family recently who kept saying, well, I have failed at this and I have failed at that, and I have failed at this and I have failed at that. And from a different perspective, it wasn't failure. It was just always redirection. It was always, this ended so this could begin. That had to come to an end. You could see it this way. Then you needed that hardship to bring you to this place. So I think that when something is no longer working, the first indication you have of that is that you dislike it. You begin to have disdain for it. It isn't something anymore that you're doing like breathing. It's something that you're forcing to breathe. I think what turns disappointment into what people think is failure is the idea that because that specific idea, that specific business did not work, now there is no space for me in that arena at all to find success. There is a place for you to pivot. And I cannot tell you how many times I have had to pivot over and over and over. To be honest with you, anytime I get a yes, this is from a writer's perspective, so it's a little bit specific, but trying to get stuff published is always an uphill battle, especially today when everything is published online and all of that. So I now, if there is a yes or there is an opportunity, that is a surprise for me, right? It's a good surprise. It's a happy surprise. But every time I've gotten a no, it is a redirective, not to, well, you're not a writer. Well, you failed. Well, you must suck at this. It's this wasn't the right space for you. Move along. It's like this freedom to say, okay, that didn't work. It's freedom of go move to the next space. This world is huge. People want to take in information and give and receive feedback. If you have a passion to do something, there's a reason for that. Pivot so that the reason fits the purpose.
So it'd be like almost like changing, well, like for example, for you, it'd be like instead of maybe posting it Huffington Post, you go to Marie Claire or something like that. Is that what you mean by?
100%. Yes. That may be the audience, right? Someone at Huffington Post might read the stuff I wrote about missing things and say, yeah, I'm going to pass on that. Or they don't see it, or they don't like it, or it doesn't resonate with them. But could you imagine if I just said, yeah, okay, then I must not be a writer.
Yeah.
I mean, doing creative work is certainly not for the faint of heart, because it's right place, right time, hard work, and continuing to pivot so that it's not internalized as failure, but as redirection.
And that's the thing, though, to get that lucky strike, to be like, right place, right time, you have to be doing the work. Like, it doesn't happen by like eating nachos in front of the telly. It's like, you got to be out there. And that's when, then you give yourself the opportunity to get there. But it's like, because you mentioned like upper limit, I look at, because we're looking at, like, so when things don't work. But I'm sort of thinking also like there's the other flip side, which, which I understand as what is called as well, the upper limit problem. So, where it's like there's this concept that all of us have this amount, there's a limit of the amount of success, happiness, and money that we will allow ourselves before sabotaging, and bring ourselves back to a more comfortable familiar level, because it's like a psychological thing. So how do you know that that's the issue that you have, like that upper limit problem of, well, that's a bit, almost like being afraid to shine and showing your light, if that makes sense, like being out there and be the boss, or whatever it is that you want to call it. How how do we recognize that when you have
Yeah.
that upper limit problem, and what do you do about it?
Yeah, I think that's so wow. It's such a truth. And we've seen people do this, right? Like we've seen people and their stars rising and their stars rising, and all of a sudden they do something or something happens, and it's like, wow, that looks a lot like self-sabotage.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
you know, there's there's a thought on that, that our biggest fear is not that we are small, but that we're huge, right? That
Yeah.
our biggest fear is not that we can't do anything, that it's that we can do everything. And that's really scary because first of all, I think human beings, we like boundaries. I mean, that's why
Yes.
schedules for children work well, right? Because we take well to knowing where our limits are. And so the idea that things success wise or financially speaking, or business wise or creativity wise, the idea that those things are limitless, that we can do whatever with whatever for however long, is really scary. You know, I am all about continue the growth as long as you can be genuine in what it is you're providing. Have you ever found yourself, saying something that maybe sounded good, or you heard someone say it and so you reframed it so that it kind of sounded the way that maybe you felt like it should have sounded instead of what really felt like you? I don't know if you've ever had that issue, but I think
Oh, yeah. Well, you mean like when you edit yourself to sound
yeah,
safer, like,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
mhm,
I do know,
yeah,
I didn't, because for a while, because I write a lot, I write everything for my business, but I've had this day job for a year, not anymore. That's coming to an end in May. It's a part-time day job, and it was very corporate, very professional, and it kind of felt like it ruined my tone of voice in my own business, because in my own business, my tone of voice is very irreverent. I swear, but all of this stuff, but it's like, I mean, I don't necessarily like swear much, but it's very irreverent. It's very, I write the way I talk. And I sort of like
mhm,
stopped doing that. I was starting to edit myself, going, unconsciously. And I was like, this sounds so boring. And
yeah,
yeah, and it's not, because it's almost like, maybe I was worried that what if the day job saw what I was doing, and they're like, I don't know.
mhm,
And it's like, and it's, yeah, you don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I hate that version of myself. I prefer when I'm
right.
free. The point of having my own business is to be completely free and be myself. And I love that part. And so I'm getting back into it now. Like, so I'm excited. But yeah, no,
Yes,
so
I love
yeah.
that. And hence the reason I love the name podcast because you know what?
Yeah.
Because aren't we too old for the shit that is be what everybody else thinks we should be, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Um so like there's someone for everyone, and I think that's the thing. Like the minute you start using your voice more, um there come the people that needed to hear that voice or that
Yeah.
resonate with that voice. The other thing I would say about the upper limit problem, so that would be my first thought, is asking yourself, is fear coming to me because this is becoming what I didn't intend in the wrong way? Meaning, like, is this becoming something that I never wanted it to be? Am I
Mhm,
saying things
mhm.
that no
Yes.
longer resonate with me? Is the success bringing me this, like, a disingenuous quality? The other thing is that, like, isn't this a question we should be asking ourselves? Is me playing small serving anybody? Like, is me being afraid of the next step, is that bringing anything to my life? Is that bringing more impact to the world? No. Like, me playing small and deciding that it's not worth it to go after something because what if I fail? It's like the quote, like the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. Like, it's the same thing here. The
Mm.
opposite of I'm trying to think how to frame
Of
it.
like
Maybe we need
passion,
to start.
passion,
Yeah,
maybe, like, yeah,
yeah, like the opposite of failure.
purpose, maybe purpose.
Yeah, I think, let me think about that for 1 second. Um, let me think about this, because I do have, I feel like this needs to be said. The opposite of impact is not failure. It's hmm, the opposite of impact isn't failure. What is it? It's
Apathy, lack of trying.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yes, the opposite of impact isn't failure, it's apathy. Like, it's this deciding that, you know what, I'm fine where I am. And even though I have this internal want to grow and become more, I don't know that I can be the small fish in the big pond. And so I'm going to stop. And I don't know if that serves our purpose or not. I really don't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there's actually a quote. I don't know if you know Kathy Heller. She has this
Yeah.
podcast called "Don't Keep Your Day Job," and she
Yeah.
says like the opposite of depression is purpose. And I think there's a lot of truth in that, because I know that, for example, I find it hard to. I mean, I love snoozing in the morning. I love to I just love my mattress is just really comfortable, and I just love being lazy in the morning. I'm so lazy in the
I
morning.
know.
So, and so, but I find it harder to get up when I wake up if I don't have something to look forward to in that day. So, or if I have
Yes.
something I need to have that motivation to get up. And, I mean, I've had times where I get up at between 4:30 and 5 in the morning, but that lasted like 3 months and then I stopped. But it's like, I need that. I need something to get up to. And I think maybe because also I live alone, so, no one's there to judge me but myself.
Yes. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. Like
No one's seeing me being a slob, so. Yeah.
Well, most people, to throw you a bone, most people don't have a successful podcast. So there. So there to the people who wake up at 4 a.m.
Yeah,
but yeah, I agree. I think there's something to be said. And again, I have to go back to, it doesn't have to be some great big, I'm gonna dominate the world today. But I really, really encourage people to have a either the notes app on their phone open or a journal next to their bed. And I can't tell you how many clients have said to me, what does that even mean? Like, I'm not a journaler, I'm not a writer. There is something so powerful about getting the thoughts out of your mind and onto paper. And if that is a list of one reason I'm going to get out of bed today, I'm going to get up for a walk outside. I'm going to do this thing with my business that I've been meaning to do. I'm going to have this conversation that I need, or something small, like I'm going to connect with a friend I haven't talked to in a long time. Those are all reasons to get up and do.
Yeah.
And often those are the things that propel us to want to do more. I'm never more creative than when I'm busy, because there's not a lot of time for the mind to wander. And so you are in that accomplishing mode.
Yeah.
And not every day needs to be that way, but I'm with you. If we wake up to the made up idea that there's nothing to do today, well, then today will be nothing.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think, I know people say like writing first thing in the morning. For me, it feels like that's like homework. Everyone's different, right? I know some people, everyone's sort of like a different type of learner or how they process and things. And I'm sure it's like, I hear so many people say how good it is, to journal that in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, like, for me, like a tip I would give, this is what I do for myself. So like, if I have if I'm gonna schedule anything, like meetings and stuff, if I can schedule them early, like first thing in the day, I'll get up early. So that's usually the only reason why I have, like, in the past scheduled things, like try to schedule them early, is not because I'm a morning person. It's because it helps me get out of bed before and get the most out of my day. And that's like a little workaround trick that I use, which can be useful. And so
very, very.
yeah, it does help. So I'm just wondering, because obviously, a lot of the things that, that we've talked about today, and what you do in your work as a life coach is, helping people, following their own path. What is their own path? Oh, sorry. I wanted to say something else before that.
Yeah.
Because you were talking about purposes and people, getting up in the morning to, to create a successful business, or to try, like, own that space, own that industry and stuff, how to have like passion and motivation and purpose in what you're doing, like, so that you get up and do it and graft, because it doesn't happen overnight. One thing I would like to add to that is that you don't, people have to, like, remember as well that you don't have to own the whole internet. Like, there are people who are listening, they have no idea who Marie Forleo is. I mean, I've mentioned her a few times, but like, she is huge in her industry. Like, within her,
she is massive. She's on Tony Robbins level, really, almost. You know, she knows him. I mean, I don't like Tony Robbins, but like, I mean, but like she's huge. She's huge. But there's other people who've no idea who she is, and she talks about it too. She says, you know, she has people who refuse to come on her show because they've no idea who she is. They don't care about her, and you know, that's what, you know, she mentioned herself. And I think sometimes you only need, there's this theory, and I haven't practiced it yet. I don't know if it's true or not, but like you just need like 1,000 true fans, and it doesn't have to be fans in the traditional sense, but it has to be like people who actually truly value what it is that you say and do. And it doesn't even have to be that many. There are actually people who have 300 people in their Facebook group, and they are six-figure earners. Because those 300 people in there buy every single thing that they sell, because they have nurtured that community and they really value what that person who's the face of that business, what they stand for. And so I think we need to forget a little bit all these follower stuff, because, you know, there's someone, she can't remember her name now, but she had like this food blog on Instagram, and she mentioned that she was struggling with money. And you know, and it was just like, this is insane, because her Instagram looked amazing. She had, I don't know, it was like 300,000 followers. She had loads of followers, and she was struggling paying the bills. She was paying the bills. She couldn't go on holiday. She couldn't go, you know, she didn't have anything extra. And on the outside, it looked like she was successful, but she was struggling. And so it's not always who you think. You know, so we need to forget that, what it looks like. Just do what it is that you got to do. Nurture people who are responding to you, and it will help you, I think, as well. And I'm kind of like, this is almost like a self-talk like a pep talk to myself, because I have to remind myself that, nurture people who actually value and respond to you, because those are the people who resonated with you, and that's all that matters. And even if you never make money out of those people, they're giving you an energy back, a feedback, and that's really important to keep that until what Jasmine Star says, like, show up till you blow up. I love that saying. I love Jasmine Star. So, you know, just show up till you blow up. Just do it, and you're not going to be confident. Just got to do it. Yeah,
exactly. I think that's true. And it's like, you can't become the expert by throwing pink paint everywhere. You know, you can't become the go-to person in your industry because your logo is really beautiful and you have an awesome Instagram account, right? I mean, because don't we know those? We know those accounts where it's like, I'm going to follow this because look how beautiful it is. And it looks so well done and so well crafted. And then you look and the content's the same every week and there's not a lot of engagement. And that always comes down to like, let the brand be you and what you are creating. Let the branding come second. You know, you can have the most beautiful outside, but it's what you want to make your impact, and what you are the brand. Now, that's different. If you're trying to create something that's for yourself, if you want to paint paintings and hang them on your wall, that is one thing. If you want to create something that has impact on others, that's asking for feedback from others, I think the most important thing is to first develop a voice. That's how you become the expert in your industry. And you're absolutely right. There's so many authors I follow that I absolutely love. And when I bring them up to people, I can't believe they possibly couldn't know them. But of course I know them because they're what I'm interested in, right?
Yes.
So you don't have to be Oprah Winfrey to be successful. And I think this age of digital and instant gratification, all of that has taught us anything. It's that sometimes the emperor has no clothes. You know, we all know that story, like the naked man walking down the street and nobody's saying, hey, has anybody noticed that he's naked? But nobody will say it because he's the emperor. It's the same thing. Like and it's so funny you bring up your social media, because I've always been the same way. Like, I have lots of fans. I have a business that I've built to be successful. And social media is mostly pictures of personal stuff because that's what's true to me, you know? So it's there's such value in that don't try to make your brand so beautiful and pretty that it's losing out on content, because the content is what's going to bring the followers.
Yeah. Yeah. I do need to work on my social media though, but I want to keep it like as me, you know, because I'm like, my brand is not pretty, I like it to look good. Like I like good design and stuff, but it's not I'm not like girly really. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, in terms of like rounding up this bit, what's the, like, have you found like there's a difference like with your client, like a difference between following their path whether they're single or in a couple?
I think when people are in a couple, their path becomes a question of two people making a decision. So
Yeah.
where I find people in couples have a hard time sometimes about following their path because they feel that they need to run their passion and path ideas by the person they're with. This actually poses a big issue, and that's why I talk a lot about crucial conversations, like why these are things in relationships that, people advise, like, well, make sure that if you both want to have kids, make sure you both know if you live in the city and the suburbs. But does anybody ever say, well, make sure you both know if one of you wants to quit your job and start a business, or if one of you wants to be, a creative that follows a passion that's, nonconformist and something different? Nobody talks about that. So I think that's a hard thing, because I think people, when they're in relationships, they want approval and they want freedom to do something, but they're also looking for permission sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a challenge. One of my favorite coaching clients, and she's also a marketing genius. She's a person who I've talked to a lot in this pandemic because she is alone. She lives in the city of Chicago and she's single. And it's so interesting because, I think that there's challenges that face people in couples, challenges that face people who are not in couples. But the thing they have in common is there's challenges. So,
yes.
The stuff that she, feels lonely about, or feels like, it would be nice to share this with somebody, or share the show with somebody, or have a conversation that means something to me. Because like you said, this is not the time to go out and meet people on blind dates. I mean, nobody can leave.
I know.
So
I do know. It's not that. It's just that it's not worth it. Like, I haven't met a single guy who was that amazing in bed that he'd be worth me risking it. And it's also because for me, like, I have a bad lung history, so I have to be more careful. I'm not in the highest risk, but I'm in a high risk, so I have to be a bit more. I'm not judging people who are out there, but like, for me, it's just not worth the risk. And it's like, that's an extra. It's like, it's a shame, because I actually want to go out on a nice date.
Yes, exactly. Yes, of course. And it's like, I think the one, piece of freedom that she and I have talked about is, I think in more ways than one, we're all sort of stuck in the four walls that we live in right now. Whether that's more like, not every single place has the same orders right now. Not everybody is going through the exact same stuff. Like in Chicago, I know we'll be one of the last to open up because there's been so many cases of coronavirus here, and it's pretty terrible. And then there's states right by us who have almost none. So we're all in a different place. But when we're stuck in the four walls in which we live, we have, even if stress feels pervasive, and even if the world feels heavy, and even if the dark days seem darker, there's one thing we can't argue, and that is we're alone with our thoughts more. We just are. And so if we can take a couple of days every week that we're in this and say, you know what, like today I'm going to use that energy. I'm going to use my pain, I'm going to use my excitement, or I'm going to use whatever feeling I have today, and I'm going to use that to create something. Like maybe I'm not going on the date I want to go on, and maybe I'm not going on the holiday I want to go on. Maybe I'm not growing as fast as I can because my business is slower, but like I can do something with this energy. Like I can do something with it. So how do I choose?
Yeah. Actually, also interestingly enough, and I heard this on another podcast, is that as much as this is like a challenge, this is not like we've all been drafted to go to war. We've been called to stay home. You know what I'm saying? Like we've been called to stay on our sofa and just sit on fat ass and be like couch potatoes, whatever the word goes in English, I don't know. But so it's like, there's also perspective, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't feel lonely at times, or like it can feel challenging. Yeah. Right. So, because our lives have been flipped upside down depending where you are. And other places in the world had, Denmark is opening up again and that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, like I think, if it can be of any sort of like relief, we're not being asked to go to Vietnam or, or Baghdad or whatever, or when it was like the Iraq war and all of that. So, there is that. So I think in a way, if we utilize this well, and allow ourselves to ride this emotional roller coaster at times, if we use it well, we can really fall into a really good place, because this is almost we've been asked to slow down. Apart from, there are people who are obviously working more than ever because they're key workers, and so that's different. But for anyone else who, we have all this time, and it's like at the same time it's like a curse and it's a blessing. So
Yeah.
So when you said take a couple of days to, you said like to use your pain to do what, for example?
Yeah. So I think, energy, like the way we feel about stuff, the feelings that we have, they can be turned into something. Like otherwise they sit with us. And that's why a lot of the time, like a bad day becomes a bad week, becomes a bad month, because the feelings that aren't used or talked about or acknowledged, they don't just go away. Like they sit inside and they spread. So, and that's why, like when a day seems good, it's like, oh my gosh, like, well, this happened and then this happened and this happened. And then it's called like a lucky day. But it wasn't really a lucky day. It was just that I was looking at the day differently. And so the stuff that maybe like the rainbow that I never looked up to see yesterday, I looked up to see today. So I think if you're having a hard time at any given time, whether it's during this pandemic and you're staying at home, or any time in life, because it is up and down and there is adversity always to overcome. And I always think that, the hardest things I've done in my life, I if you would have asked me before I went through them, could I have, how would I do in this? But you know how when people say, I'm interrupting myself, but you know how when people say something bad happens and when their response is, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine what it's like.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, isn't that it's our own rejection of wanting to imagine what it's like to be in a hard position or a bad position. So I think,
what do you
if
mean?
we can,
I don't think I understand what you mean. So if they say they can't imagine what it's like.
Yes, I'll just give you a personal example. Like my husband's father died very suddenly 2 years ago.
Okay.
It was overnight. He was a healthy man, and all of a sudden his lungs started failing. He was a never smoker, and he went to the hospital one day, and 3 days later he was gone.
Yeah,
and it was this, it was grief and loss and trauma that I personally had never experienced before, and I. Sitting in the hospital those days and not only feeling pain for somebody that I loved getting sicker and dying, but also watching my husband go through that pain.
Yeah, that's really hard. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you would have asked me a year before that happened, how I would have done in the hospital those days and how I would have done, watching my husband cry and fall down a wall in a hospital hallway, I would have said, I couldn't imagine it. I couldn't imagine it. I wouldn't be able to do it. But then you have to do it, right? Like there was no choice on whether to do it. I did it, and he did it, and we did it. And it wasn't anymore like, I can't imagine it. I had to imagine it because we were going through it. And so I think in the days following, there were dark and quiet days of this pain needs to sit with me until it's time for it to leave or lighten.
Mm-hmm.
But there was also a space, because I never felt pain like that before, that it was an opening for me to write and talk about it, because I knew that there were so many people who had gone through what I had gone through and who had gone through what my husband had gone through. And so it wasn't so much like an opportunity to connect. It was necessary to do so, because there's something so empowering about taking pain and deciding, I'm going to go connect with those people who have felt this before, for people who can imagine it because they've been through it.
Yeah, and you need that space so that you don't have to also explain,
Mm-hmm.
but you can actually go straight to support each other and be a relief, and being allowed to feel the way you do without someone going. Sometimes I think because people sometimes they don't always know what to say and what to do, because they in shock themselves too with what's happening to you. And sometimes what they say can be really aggravating. It's almost like they're saying, they could almost, they don't, they may say, oh, you still, they would never say that, but they just, it's almost like they don't understand, it's not allowing you to have the grief that you have. Or it's also the flip side where you feel too much, almost like pity from them, or sorry, like, and it just really infuriates you.
Yes.
Right, so like no one, they can't always. So to be with people who get it is a big relief, and back to what you were saying, that's why it's important to either, like you said, like write about it or create a group about it, because there are people out there feeling the same. And I actually hope that there are groups of people who there are probably groups out there who've experienced someone passing during this pandemic, and they couldn't have a proper funeral, or they couldn't have all the rituals they would do normally, where maybe people come to the house, or you could go to the hospital. All of these things have been taken away for a lot of people at the moment, whether that person died of COVID or not. There could be something else passed of. So all of these things, and unless someone's gone through that, you can empathize, but you can't really get it. And I think so that's why, like, you just need one person to start and write a little forum or a blog. This is how it feels, and someone's going, "Oh my God, I'm not alone in this."
Yes,
going through this, and that's why we need that connection, right? Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's the piece, and that's the whole thing. Is that I think if we boiled it all down to the concept of, like, what is our collective purpose here? I really do think it is to help to validate each other, to help acknowledge each other, to help see each other's pain, and also see each other's successes. And I think we can only do that when we're working and living in a space genuine to us. Because if I'm being my most genuine, then my voice is very genuine. And then I'm resonating with the people who are looking for that genuine voice.
Yeah, exactly. We all have the same emotions, actually, and feelings.
Yeah.
We just have different experiences and obviously different degrees of those emotions and feelings. So there's a spectrum on those feelings and emotions, but we all have them. And I think it's really important to allow ourselves to allow other people to have those feelings. It's very easy to go, "Oh, well, that person, they've had everything served to them on a silver platter." And maybe they have, maybe they haven't. You don't know. But it doesn't mean that they can't have feelings, doesn't mean they can't have issues in their lives. It would be, their issues is obviously not the same as someone who's like escaping a war,
Yeah.
But
yeah,
so obviously there's perspective, but it doesn't mean, I think if we stop people having those feelings and reaching out because they're going through the same pain, we'd be creating monsters if we didn't allow people to just feel and express themselves. And I think we've seen this so much in politics, like, in the last few years, where it's just gone a bit crazy. But it's not because we can't even expect it. You can't mute people. You cannot keep people quiet. You can't people not express their feelings. And we have to connect. And if we don't connect, it's too easy to judge each other, and it's too easy to want to shame each other.
Yeah.
And then it's okay to have like a healthy dose of shame, so you can tell someone, "Hey, that's too far. I think you need to rein it in," But it's you have to connect. That's the main thing, isn't it? And you do it through writing, coaching, and we all have different ways of doing it. It's fantastic.
Yes. And there's truly no better feeling than when someone hears a story you've told or looks at something that you've created and says, I feel that way too. And I think when I look to the people that I most love to follow or most love to read, it's because they have created something that means something to me, so much so because it makes me feel like I'm not alone.
Yeah. And that's so important, because we can feel alone so much. Yeah. And that's, And absolutely love this. This has been so brilliant, Bridget.
Oh, well, you're amazing. I wish we could sit and have coffee, because you're hilarious and fun and smart. And I think you're awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this has been so wonderful, Bridget. Really, it kind of went in places I didn't really expect as well, because we'd never spoken before. But
I know. I love it. It was fun. It's like, I love when the conversation goes to, like, now we're not just talking about like our businesses and what we do and our purposes, but like, all right, here's what's happening in our real lives. And I think that's important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's been, I heard your voice. And I was just like, Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Well, ditto. And
Okay.
as much as, and then I wish I could just have your accent. Then I'd feel really great because my Chicago accent is obnoxious even to me. So we're not sure how.
Oh no, I like it. I like it. I love accents anyway. I love accents. So I'm gonna ask you the two finishing thoughts, like finishing questions that I ask everyone. So the first one is, what would you tell your 18-year-old self, Bridget?
You know what? I know that this is going to be surprising, but I think it's going to be harder than you think it is, but it's going to be better than you think it is.
Yes.
I think, like, people always say, like, I would tell myself that it's going to be okay or that you're going to make it. And it's like, no, like, there's challenges I've come across that have been way harder than I could have imagined. Like, there was a part of me that my naivete at that age was so, all right, put my mind to it. And where there's a will, there's a way. And there's truth to that. But just age brings wisdom, but it also brings things we didn't know about when we were 18 years old. Right. So yeah. I think that would be my message to her.
Yeah, and that's a really good one, because I think if people just expect it all to be easy, they give up much faster.
Yes.
So the second one is, what stuff do you not put up with anymore, Bridget?
I'm going to say what stuff I'm trying not to put up with anymore, because this is now a flashback to the part of our conversation about what lessons does the universe pummel into you over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. I was born a nice girl. And I, somewhere along the line, believe that if I was just friendly enough and just nice enough, then I would always be liked. I would avoid confrontation and everything be perfect. Yes. And that has not served me in my adult life. And so I'm relearning all the time. I'm unlearning all the time that being nice isn't the same as being kind, that being selfless isn't always the way to be. And that sometimes having a backbone is what makes you the kind of person who is nice to yourself.
Yes.
And I need to be that. And so I'm trying not to put up with, but it's a lifelong journey. And we could have a whole nother conversation about just that, about how, it's amazing to me that I still put up with some stuff that I know I've learned, or that I know that I've tried to master, or that has shown up to me. But it's just, to me, it's like I said before, it's a directive that says you're still on your way to learn it. And it's in the journey that I'm going to master it, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the discernment between nice and kind is huge. It's, you can do more damage being nice, but it's like, I use this example actually in the health coaching I do. I was saying to clients, I was like, it is nice to go and visit your elderly parents or grandparents, depending on the age group they were in, but it is kinder not to, because they're the ones who are vulnerable. So yeah, it is nice to go over and have cake and tea, but it's kinder not to. And obviously some people are going to disagree with this. Fine, doesn't matter. That's just my point of view. Yeah. They don't have to like it. But that's really the difference between nice and kind, because when you love someone, when you respect someone, you're not gonna, sometimes requires a bit of tough love, and it requires to make hard decisions. And it's like, like, for example, like, if when I also remember, like, when my granddad, when he, like, the first time he said punish me, like, he called me up on my crap, basically, and I was completely misbehaving. And I still remember to this day what he did and what he said. And he was a very impressive man for a little kid. And I remember that my first thought was like, wow, he really loves me, because I knew I was misbehaving, but he wasn't letting me get away with it. And it's not because I'm a masochist, it was like, oh, he cares. You know what I'm saying? Like, he really cares. And, and I think that's the thing is, being nice is like, oh, let your child run away. And my mom definitely, she's strict as well, so but it is like, that's also because I know they both care, and so you have to, So Bridget, please tell us, where can people find you?
Oh, yes, please connect with me. You can sign up for my newsletter on my website, bridgetchambers.com. I love connecting with readers and people who want to connect in any way, in a coaching manner. And, I think it's just like we were talking about this whole conversation. There's something empowering and wonderful about connecting with people you resonate with. And I'm on Instagram at Bridge Chambers, BRIDG Chambers. And like I said, there's not a lot of pink paint thrown on that. It's mostly just me and my personal life and some business stuff. And I write for lots of different publications. I would love anybody on here to read. And I am currently working on getting my first full manuscript book represented by an agent. And I am creating a course for people in transition. So I would love, love, love to connect with any of your listeners.
Oh, I love that. And the course will be available online?
Yes, online. Yep. I'm in the development of it now. It's something, and that was kind of pointing, and I won't go on too long of a tangent about it, but that was, pointing to like, when you have to pivot in your purpose, I never started out at, 22 years old thinking, well, I want to have a life coaching course someday. I just wanted to become a life coach. And so now talking to people one-on-one all the time, I'm realizing that, so many of us are struggling with the same things. We're all different ages, we're different genders, we have different professions, but the stuff we struggle with is the same. They're the same themes. And it's often when we're in times of transition that we find ourselves up against a wall. And so I thought, what about creating a course that several people can get in on together, connect with each other and me, and maybe that's a new way to pivot this purpose. So
yeah,
that will be up on my site as a preview in the next month or two.
I love it. Okay, well, I'll put all the links in the show notes. Well, thank you so much, Bridget. This was so wonderful.
Oh, Angie, thank you for your time and your energy and what you put out into the world. Because like I said, I had already listened to some of your episodes and you're great and full and fun. So I really loved our conversation. I hope we do it again.
Thank you. Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And that's our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to rate, review, share it, subscribe it on iTunes, follow it on Spotify or whichever platform you listen from. However you show love is how you can support this show. Drop me your questions or suggestions for future episodes via the website at angie-s.com or come and find me on Instagram. I have 2 accounts. One is at Tool for Dish It Podcast and at Health Expert Angie. Link in the show notes. See you next week. And until then.
Using health inappropriately.